Hello, welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers. My name is Michael Sandoval.
I'm Chris Detzel.
Nice to see you, Chris. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's good beer.
Hopefully everybody heard the clinking of the glass.
Oh, they sure did. So we just finished a podcast around open source content, and I think one of the conversations you had, or one of the thoughts you had, was very interesting around online and offline events with community.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. So what was your question about it? Because you said you had a question.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of questions, and well, I'll say a lot. Let's just see what I have. One, I think there's a huge connection between online and offline community, and I think that building relationships with people is highly important offline. But when you can bring those online, so for example, if you're building something like open source software and you're offline, or you're at some restaurant or some event or whatever, and you're coming up with this cool code and you're talking to your peer right next to you, say, hey, I'm trying to do these things. Great. And then there's these relationships starting to being built, right? And then but then how do you bring those online? And I think it's probably easier to do that because of the relationship that you build face to face, because you know that person. Online is probably purely online. It can happen, and it does happen, but it's a little harder, I think. And so what I wonder is the importance of kind of the two is, so you mentioned that you at TI built this the Bagel board, and maybe I said it wrong, Beagle board.
Oh, the
Bagel.
Beagle.org. Yeah. Beagle.
Sorry, my bad.
Beagle board. Yeah.
Beagle board.
Yeah.
I'm from Texas, and so
and it's the community, not the board itself. Board was built by somebody else. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And but then you also had many conversations at night with different people that you were building some stuff and all these things. So it got me to thinking, and something that I've talked to is I've been to some conferences and I've talked to other community managers, is some people really have a job of offline community, which means, you go into restaurants hanging out, or you're doing some kind of presentation, or you're getting people together somewhere that's not online, right? And so I'm just wondering, what are some things that you guys did, or that you feel like a strategy around offline events? How is that important? But then how do we bring it to online?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. This is where I get to say it depends on your product, or what you're trying to do, right? I think it really makes sense in the software arena.
Okay.
And there are a couple ways you can look at offline events. You can look at, I will put them into three phases. One is trade show events, or we'll call them event-specific events.
Yep.
Two would be ad hoc events. Those are things you created as a result of being very specific to something. And then the third one would be, I would call it like user groups.
Yes.
Right? So those are my three kind of ways you can meld the offline world with the online world.
So before you decide to go off on those three things, I want to make sure that you're going to talk about all three of those, because more so, I understand exactly what you're talking about in the first two.
Yep.
But when you say user groups, I want you to, you don't have to do it now, but kind of explain what that means and how you kind of manage that.
Yeah. So let's talk specifically about user groups. So, I think a lot of folks know what user groups are, right? So these are individuals within a particular geographical location.
Okay.
City specific.
Yep.
Where individuals who are using your product get together physically to talk about your product, right? And they could be developers who are trying to get to use your product and need to know others who are using it. They want to share ideas. And I have been to user groups that have been very big. This is going back to, when I was working with the Jive product, we had an Austin user group, and they met monthly. And it was actually pretty good. You had...
By the way, the people that used to use Jive just loved that product. It's no longer around, because Kuros, or back, whatever they were called before, Lithium bought them. But just a side note, it's so funny, but that Jive must have been just the shit of a product,
yeah, the
right? You know what I
shiznit,
mean?
as
It's
they
just like
Well, because they did a pretty good job about stuff like this,
Yeah.
right? So they did a really good job of outreach,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of very valuable in that regard. So, I mean, they spent money. The company would spend money in creating these offline events where they would get the the power users together. They would spend it in such that they would say each person, or over the time they would say, bring us a use case story or bring us a case study. We could share. Somebody would provide drinks and food.
Yep.
You would meet others in the city who were using the same product. It was a networking event. It actually worked great.
Okay.
I enjoyed that a lot. In some way, a lot of other products are the same way. You can have that same type of atmosphere. That's a lot, and it depends on the company's investment, right? You can have that high level investment, and that takes money, people, resource,
it's
person
highly expensive to continue to do a lot of those.
to go manage that, right? Because somebody has to coordinate that. You have to have
It's hard.
so that requires resource, right? You could have, and like anything, any user group can be dialed up or dialed down, right? So you can have a user group that's just managed by a volunteer, and they don't have to meet physically. They just have their own forum space. They have their own user space, right? And they can communicate intimately between the members.
That's online, though.
That's
what you're talking
online.
about.
Yeah, exactly
Okay.
correct. They're all online. So you can create, like every community has the ability to create a space so Jive uses spaces, Intelligent uses groups. You can have private groups. You can
Yeah, you
do all
just
that
create
kind
a
of stuff.
private group in the Higher Logic platform and
Yep.
just kind of
All kind
allow
of the same.
different people in, whoever you like.
Yep, all kind of same thesis,
Got it.
right? And that allows you to have this kind of sense of micro community. This is
Yep.
my space, right? And these are my people.
You have somebody manage that, and then
Yep.
got it.
Yeah, and the finding the right volunteer is the key there, right? So you want somebody who
So complicated. Okay.
yeah, well, it is complicated.
Everything's so goddamn
Complicated.
gosh darn complicated.
It's all right. No, it is. I mean, I don't mean to overstate it, but I mean,
Yeah.
this is usually when you get into this element of user groups, you're in another stage of evolution in your community, right? So
Okay.
you're not in the growth stage. You're in the mature stage, right? So you've gone through growth, you're in acceleration, now you're in the third stage of maturity. So
Okay.
when you're in the maturity stage, you can do a lot of these activities where you can do user groups, right? You can do these offline events type stuff, right?
Okay. That makes sense.
And again, it depends on the product, right? So software lends itself very well to some of these events. And like I said, it depends on how you want to have it. You can have a very high touch environment where you meet once a week and it's coordinated and there's people around with that kind of level of effort. Microsoft does this. The MVP program does this. And they have a whole offline program. Microsoft specifically has a whole offline program just for their MVP program. It's quite extravagant. And
It seems expensive to me.
it is.
I mean,
but,
of course they can afford it, but
yes, yeah, that's right. It is expensive, but I think for them, again, if I were to use Microsoft as an example, they see those individuals, and I think there was a really unique study that calculated the amount of effort that those engineers had put into their product. I mean, they calculated the dollar per hour,
yeah.
and we're talking millions of dollars, right? So these individuals who are not asking for money, they're part of a recognition program. They are doing it for their own, alpha geek status, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? They get all the accolades from Microsoft. They're given these little badges. And in that effort, they are contributing to millions of dollars of free, I'll call it free,
Yeah.
code to Microsoft. So there is a tangible
So
effort.
even if they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're getting millions and millions of dollars back.
Yep, that's exactly correct. It would be interesting to study to see what X factor there is in something like that, right? Maybe it is something that easy. It's a 10x factor, right? For every $100,000 that a company is providing for them in revenue, if they have a number of individuals who are in the MVP program, that's $1 million of
Yeah.
product, right? I don't know, right?
So when you were at the companies doing the open source, did you have a strategy around offline, or were you just kind of meeting people just willy nilly, or what was your?
So it's a good question. So I myself, as a community manager, did not.
Okay.
But there was an offline strategy. So this was being managed by the gentleman I mentioned earlier, Jason Krittner from TI, who owns he's the father of the Beagle board. And he took it upon himself to do these offline events with community managers. So he would, since he himself was the community guru, he was the guy who owned the community. He was the guy he was the face. People knew him.
Yeah.
When he was at a city, he would purposely create an event for those users. So they would say, hey, I'm going to be at this event. I would love to meet fellow beagleboard.org users. I'm going to be at this, almost like a meetup.
And this is a mature state of a community and doing these things. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, so we matured quickly on Beagleboard.
Quickly, 1 year, 2 years.
I would say we went through the growth. It took a year to get through the growth spurt. By the year, we were in a pretty good spot where we actually had enough community individuals that we can actually meet face to face.
Okay.
It's a bit different on the open source side because it's kind of where you're almost using our own time, right? So it's a little bit different. So regardless.
So did he travel to these different places and then just kind of, hey, I'm doing this event here, so let's meet?
Yep, exactly correct. Just like that. So he would post that he was going to be at, blah, 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 tech industry.
And this is before, blah, blah, blah. You could create an event, like so for example,
this is before,
has this whole event management type thing. There was none of that. There was just a discussion post, basically, is what you're saying?
He would discuss. At that time, he was also on Twitter. So Twitter was round, so he would, he did Twitter. I mean, he was quite followed. He was, folks knew where he was going to be.
Okay.
And so he
do you
was
keep up with this guy still? Or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You still know him?
Facebook friends. Yeah, exactly correct.
Okay. I'm going to have to link him in.
It's been a while since last time I've talked to him, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll link him in.
He's a really good guy. He's really cool.
So Michael said some good things about you.
No, he's a cool chap. But he would manage those events himself. But he took it upon himself to do that. So he was the resource, right?
Yeah.
So he was the guy who would set it all up, right? So in a sense, I would consider him in that scale middle, right? So if I consider the old Jive way of doing things, user groups, that would be high touch. I would say the dedicated kind of user open source community person who would say, hey, I'm going to be at this event. Let's kind of figure out a way we can meet to each other. And there was some sponsorship by the company. So if he wanted to take some folks out for dinner, he would do that.
Yeah,
right? So that's kind of like the mid. And then the low level would be only online, one really good volunteer creating this user group situation. Right?
Okay.
And using the technology that's built into the platform that allows that to happen. So that you would give that person kind of administrative rights to that user group, right?
Yeah.
And there still should, the one thing I think folks with user groups don't know is that they should have metrics around user groups. Because user groups that don't, you don't want a user group to just die and wither, right? Yeah. And you want to have very healthy user groups. I would rather have, if I was in a big company with a software or product or physical product, saying we have 3 strong user groups in these 3 cities versus like another competitor may have like 20, but they're all pretty shitty.
What are some good metrics, Michael? What would you want to look at?
So it's almost the same thing like with regards to community metrics. It's participation, and I would look at it by number of active participants. Very simple.
Or just people there. I mean, I would think that people that just show up is good.
Yeah, well, again, it depends on the strategy, right? So if you're just online only.
No, I'm saying we're talking about offline, right? So
yeah, I mean, but remember the 3 user group pieces, right? You can have high touch, middle, or low.
Okay.
If you have high touch, it's about physical presence.
That's what we're talking about, right?
Yes. But we talked about the fact that you could have user groups, and that user groups can be high touch offline, or they can be online only, right? As a factor.
All right. Well, that's complicated, but hey, if we're looking just offline,
Yep.
and so I know your friend Jason, is his name?
Oh, Jason Critter. Yeah.
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 Okay, so he is the one running all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you look at now, let's bring it to now. So when I'm trying to create an offline thing, companies are going to want, because they're going to be paying for like food or whatever, and they're going to,
Sure.
Chris, what kind of stuff are you bringing? Why are you even here? So. It's so the metrics I think I should be looking at, maybe, and you tell me what you think, but is people that show up, one, so they're hearing about different products and things like that, and what else? I mean, are they case studies, or are they, hey, we're moving those people from offline to online, and so 10 of those people are now online and they're actually talking and things like that, or whatever. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm actually processing your question. So there's two ways I can look at the metrics, right? One is around user group metrics, which is almost different from like activation metrics. So like, let's just say that there's a value in getting. Let's just say that for every customer that comes into your community,
Yep.
and participates in a user group,
Okay.
they become 2 times more loyal. Let's just throw that as a potential data point that you've discovered,
Okay.
right? So therefore, there should be a metric in the company to say, let's get this customer into a user group, because data shows that by putting them in a user group, they become 2 times more loyal, right?
Is that true?
No, I'm throwing that out there.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if it's true or not. I, although it'd be very interesting if others have such data,
Yeah.
right? Because I do think that the more you participate in the brand, like physically in the brand, the more loyal you are to a customer. And this is hindering back to like a 2003 study from McKinsey.
I thought you were going to say like 1920s, but
No, I thought it was nice,
internet
but I
wasn't
think
around,
more like
but-
2003. I think McKinsey did the study around this idea of brand activation, where the more you participate in the brand, the more
Yeah.
loyal you are to the brand. And this is where some of these interactive stuff becomes more valuable, because that's a really interactive piece, right? So let's just say that's a true data point.
Okay.
I'm totally making that shit up. Then there should be some metrics around the activation of customers through time, right? So new customer acquisitioned or acquired, time it takes to get them on the community, time it takes them to get to a user group, right? And then the next step is, once they're in the user group, how long is it before they participate?
Okay.
That kind of easy funnel. But that being said, I mean, I think you can look at, depending on the type of user group, going back to this high, mid, and low, you can have different users. So going back to your original question, which is, what if I have a physical event,
Yeah.
right? I think definitely number of people who showed up
Okay.
should definitely be
Finally,
part of that.
yes. That's a good one. Check mark.
Check. But I even think like the diversity of those people who show up, right? So let's just say you have.
Who are they?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just say 100 people are in the user group,
Okay.
but 10 are the only ones that are active, but 5 only show up physically, right? Are they
That
the
sounds
same?
pretty good.
Oh yeah, I'm just throwing that out there as a
Yeah, yeah.
possibility. Are they the same 5 over and over again?
Hmm.
Is there an ability for you to grow that presence number over time?
Yeah.
And did the makeup of those 5 or include others in the group?
Yeah.
And there's ways to kind of metric that piece.
Okay.
It gets a little in the weeds,
Yeah.
if you will. But I think the importance of having a user group, let's just kind of pull up a little bit,
Yeah.
is very important in the offline strategy of the community, if that helps. Right?
That's fair.
And I think there's ways to kind of metric the value in, or at least the participation piece. And I feel there's really good data. I haven't looked for it personally. There's good industry data around individuals who physically either show up or participate in user groups have a reciprocal buying power or come back to the brand at some rate of dollar, or at least at a minimum reduce churn in some way
Yeah.
that can be valuized or evaluated in some way in an ROI model.
Okay.
I feel quite confident that can be done.
So I think metrics are highly important because people or businesses really think that's important. It is. So what are some things? I don't know how much time we have on this podcast, but
We'll have to come to the end, but go ahead.
so last question, I guess,
Yep.
is when you look at getting these user groups together offline at an event, whether it's a steakhouse or doesn't matter, but do you have a main speaker there, or what kind of things do you talk about? What's the point of it? If it's from a brand, like if it's a brand kind of offline event, do you have a main? Because my thought would be, I'd find somebody really smart about this thing, and then I would have them talk. But if we're talking about developer stuff, or I'm not sure that this is the case. I don't know.
That's a good question. So I'm going to go back to one of your old employers, Forrester.
Yep.
They're the ones that kind of came up with the 5 basic categories of community, right? So you have supportive, inspirational. Oh God, I'm going to be quizzed on this. I can't remember the other 3. Oh, one is talking. One is receiving. I'm kind of.
Are you making shit up?
No. I know this sounds like I'm making shit up, but no. It's from the Groundswell book.
Oh yeah.
Burnoff stuff,
Josh.
right? Josh Burnoff, right.
Yep.
So
He's a character, by the way.
Yes, he is a character. I've met him. I think if your community falls in one of those things, what you focus on is those things. So, for example, if you're in a supportive type of community,
Okay.
right? So that you're using the product and you want support, then you should spend time in that effort, right? So I'll go back to Jive as an example just because that's one I was
Sure.
personally participating in. They were being inspirational, right? They were trying to get you to be excited about the product.
Yeah.
So they created offline events that were inspirational in nature. So they wanted to showcase the times in which other people got or had success in using the product. So they would focus on those as a part of their discussion.
This is like case study.
Case study about how they solved this, what they did. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly correct. So there was that piece. They also would spend some time on sharing information. So that was part of it. If I was, say, for example, in a security software company,
Yep.
we'll just throw it out there, I would focus it on, so this is this idea of supportive, right? How can you
Yep.
help those engineers become more successful in using your product
Yes.
so that they don't have to think about, so they don't have to come to a problem, you prevent the problem.
Yeah.
So this could be something like roadmaps that are coming up on the product. They have privileged information before others. They have
It's genius.
access to, hey, your favorite software engineer who's developed this one product is going to be at this place. Come meet him face to face.
Product manager. Or
Product manager,
developer.
exactly correct.
those
This is
kind
the
of people.
time where you can ask some of the, why doesn't this product do this thing, right?
So you know what
can
that
get in
makes
front
me
of them.
think of, Michael, is I really need to build relationships with product developers and product marketers.
Yes, I
Product
do.
managers, sorry, and get them to go to different things, or let me know when they're at different things so I can communicate that out to my customers.
I think so, and I think if you allow them time in their schedule to say, "Hey, I'm going to send a couple of community members your
Yeah.
way," I think you'll find out that, oh my God, I had some time from the busy schedule of some of these developers who are out there selling product to talk about my shit, my problems,
Yeah,
and I had that access because I was participating in the community.
I love
And
this.
I think that creates a value-add story that you can kind of push.
Michael, this has been extremely exciting podcast.
Oh, well, thank you.
I really appreciate the expertise that you bring, and this was really cool for me. I mean, because it helps. Just this last piece really helped me think about the offline piece, right? Because I believe with all my heart, and I've thought this for a long time, is that there's a huge opportunity to bring offline community people into this online environment and to participate more. And I believe that they'll participate a lot more, if you start building relationships with them face to face.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily saying it has to be community manager's job to go to every single event, but maybe at first, somebody said this, and maybe we'll end with this. But it's Chris. In the beginning, you do all the things that seem impossible as a community manager, right? Whether it's contacting members, whether it's going to offline events, whether it's doing whatever it takes in the beginning to find those super users, to find those people that want to be engaged and involved. And so that's what you got me very excited about this offline piece and just describing kind of this strategy that you mentioned. And so thank you for that. That was really cool.
Anytime. I hope others have the same kind of enlightenment.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, with that, thank you very much for listening. This is Michael Sandoval.
This is Chris Detzel.
Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.